Welcome to Generation Eve, and this is part one of Living with Cancer. And I'd like to introduce Terry Lacey to you. Terry and I both are cancer survivors, so we just wanted to talk a little bit about what that looks like for us in our everyday life, and thankfully we both are cancer free, and it's been a few years, so we are praising God for that. Wanted to first talk about, Terry, what was your first reaction when the doctor gave you the diagnosis?
Denial. Truly, I really honestly believed from the depths of my soul they had the wrong person. They had swapped a sample or something was wrong. I was assured before my surgery that it was fibroadenoma. I've had those in the past. So the shock was so much so that until my second surgery, when they checked the margins and they found cancer there, I didn't believe it was me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we can all have different reactions. I know for me, it was probably fear. My dad had cancer. He had passed away not even 2 years prior. My mom had had a heart attack, and it just seemed like we had been in a season of our life where things and tragic things had happened, and you just don't expect it. I don't think anybody ever really expects it. I think for me, it was just a shocker and the fear, and realizing that the first thing I needed to do was deal with the fear.
Yes.
And what would you say for you? What are the thoughts other than the denial?
Fear. I had just had a baby, so I was struggling with postpartum from that pregnancy. She was 3 months old. I was getting better, but I wasn't there yet. I wasn't myself. I still hadn't been leaving the house. So when this diagnosis came, it was just, I was fearful. I couldn't believe on top of the postpartum, now I was going to be dealing with this. And also my husband lost his job only weeks after we got the diagnosis. So I was extremely fearful as to how we were going to pay for treatment. I wasn't even thinking about insurance at the time. It was just all happened at once. I was so completely overwhelmed by it.
I think you were talking about your kids. I homeschooled all the way through high school, but at the time, this was 8 years ago almost, and my kids were pretty young at that time. They were in middle school and early high school. And so, for you moms who have those age kids, sometimes that's a difficult time because their body is changing. And so I can remember thinking that, my kids are completely dependent on me. It's not just for food and meals and washing their clothes. They depended on me almost every minute of every day. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, just to be honest.
Yeah, me too. I was very blessed that my mother lived a mile down the road, and she didn't actually move in with us, but you would have thought so, because she was there every day caring for my baby and taking Brady to kindergarten every day, did the daily things. It was a hard journey for me to learn to surrender my home and my children to somebody else, even my own mother, because I wanted to do it myself. But in the long run, I knew it was going to benefit my children if I took care of myself during this season more than it would if I was micromanaging my home. So I really had to surrender control.
We kind of have to pick those battles. And I know for me, we never had family that was in town with raising our kids, even from the time that we got married. And so I just had always gotten used to, it was Alex, me, and my three. And but I do remember that at that time there was a good friend of mine, Maria, and we just did life together. And even as I think about it now, it just brings that emotion back, because she was really like a sister, and she would always call at the right time.
Right.
She would say, "Hey, do you want me to walk your dog or make you a meal?" She was family, and I'll just never forget that, how much she meant to me during that time. Another question is, how did people around you respond when they realized what you were dealing with?
They're so well-intentioned. Thing that I got the most was horror or not very pleasant stories of their either experience with cancer or somebody they knew that had passed away from cancer. And that was very hard to hear, because I hadn't gone through it yet. I had my own journey to pave, and I didn't want those stories in my mind thinking about how awful it was going to be. I wanted life-giving stories. I wanted words of encouragement. And it was, unfortunately, that's a time when people want to share what they've been through.
And they don't know what to say.
And they don't know what to say.
And they talk.
Yeah.
And I think that's something too, if you know somebody going through cancer, I can tell you too, it was the same thing for me, Terry. I would have people tell me their aunt or uncle, it wasn't just that they had stage 3 colon cancer, but they went through chemo, they recovered, and it came back, and they passed away within the 5 years. That's not easy. So we guarded ourselves. Alex and I became very private about who we shared this journey with, because we felt like that, like you said, we wanted people that would be on board to encourage us.
Yes, speak
along
life.
the way. Yeah,
Speak life into you. So that was a big mistake that I made, was letting people in my life during that time who I thought would be helpful, listening to other survivors' stories, when really it ended up causing more fear and anxiety for me for the most part.
Yeah, I agree with that. And okay, so one last question is, what memory do you have of, like, what did maybe your worst day or your best day, what did it look like for you? Because, you know, when you're going through cancer, it's real easy to sit here on the other side and say, you know, it was rough, but we're here and we've survived. But what does it really look like when nobody's around and you're at home with your children, with your family? You've just come back maybe from chemo. What would that look like for you?
I take my wig off. A lot of times I wore a wig. For me, that just felt comfortable to have a wig on. I didn't want people to outwardly know that I was going through it for the most part. So I would take my wig off, and it was just a reality. There was a lot of tears in the privacy of our own home, just of how I looked, not having hair. I looked pale. I just didn't feel like myself. And I was tired. That was the worst part for me, was the fatigue was unreal.
I think that that's the part of it maybe people don't always get, because when you're out in public, you can smile or high five. And, but you know, I think even your faith, that's where the test is for me, because I chose alternative therapy. For me, it took 4 to 5 hours a day. I can remember Alex and I, after I had recovered from surgery, and I can remember we went out to dinner, and it was getting to be 9 o'clock, and thinking my life is revolving around a clock right now, because I knew I needed to get home, to get my sauna, to get my shower, to get in bed, to start all over again, remembering that I didn't want this to be tragic. So I tried to keep it together with the help of the Lord, and I really am glad that I did. Not because I was faking it, but sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. And for me, it was kind of like, you know what? I'm healed. I'm healthy. I'm going to come out of this. I'm going to live and not die. And so I acted that way, even though at times when I was all alone, I was exhausted. And I knew that every minute I had something else, and I had to stay very consistent with it. We want to let you know that part 2 will be coming in just a few weeks. We're going to talk a little bit more about what our therapies look like, some similar, some completely different. And I also want to encourage you, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also to GenerationEve.com.